That's perfect.
And if I wouldn't play Izadora, well, I really like Anacostia,
Mm.
and I think Isadora would like to. I don't know, yeah, yeah. So probably Anacostia.
Yeah, that's quality role.
Mm. Yeah,
Dimitri's
yeah,
so
yeah.
good in that though, right? So
She's so fantastic.
she's
She's so
good.
fantastic. So I
Yeah.
would never want to take her. No, never ever. Let's say I just want more scenes with her then.
Well, there's some nascent Isadora Anacostia shippers as well, so they'll be happy to hear that.
There we go. Oh
You're a
yeah.
big fan.
There we go.
Yeah.
Fine.
Amazing. This next question is from Sophia at Sophia Aries 97. And she said, Miss Leclerc, how did you prepare for the role of Izadora? Did Elliot talk about necromancy with you, or did you do that research yourself? So I guess you've answered some of it a little bit. So maybe, at some point, have you sat down with Elliot to talk about necromancy or Izadora as a character, or is it more kind of like he's like running around?
Yeah, not much. I think there's a difference between like the six leads, and I think they probably, because they are involved like from the beginning, like throughout, and they're way more present. I think there's a bit maybe more like decisions being discussed. But when you're a secondary character or an actor role, like unless you have questions, you can ask, but otherwise you just do what you think is right. And I've had the chance to chat with Elliot like towards the end, which was lovely, but we didn't talk about necromancy in particular. No.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, do you sit, you mentioned you talked to Amalia to get a little bit of info over what she's thinking, but do you sit around with some of the other characters who are doing the magic and try to compare notes, be like, yeah, I think magic kind of looks like this, like what is your read on it, or do you just kind of wing it?
Yeah, I totally did. And what I started doing too is just like, instead of bothering the cast who, sometimes you need to be in their headspace, or they need to be learning lines, or, everybody has a routine that you have to be aware of and respect. I just started chatting with like the sound people, or the wranglers, or like the third 80s or whatever, and just asking like, oh, like for example, when I communicated with in the war room in episode 8, like what's that head tilt, like how much do they tilt, like what's that, or how do they do, like how have they done that. So just to try to quiz people, and people were so nice on this set, and it was a dream come true of a job. Like everybody was so kind, um just everybody, like everybody from like the food truck people to like the makeup artists and the sound people and the grip, and everyone was so helpful that after a few days I worked up the courage to ask my questions, and everybody was super kind. Yeah.
Awesome. Would you, it must be interesting to be on such a female centric show, right? I mean, there's so much female energy in the, I mean, like the cast is almost all women. Like there are men who show up, but mostly it's a world of like it's like the inverse Bechdel test. Like it's all women talking about everything but men, right? Like kind
Yeah,
of doing their thing. Is that interesting for you?
but it was beautiful. Like it was like mostly female, but like no drama, like no drama queens, like everybody working together, telling a story that we care about, right? So it was just so lovely. Yeah, so lovely. And it wasn't I remember working with uh just everybody, like working with Demetra, working with Lynn Renee. I was a bit intimidated by Lynn at the beginning. I was like, oh my gosh, she's such an amazing actress, such a big deal, like I was, and the kindest people ever. They're so wonderful and helpful. So it was highly inspiring, I have to say. Like, yeah, awesome. I don't know. Yeah.
I went to a women's college, so I feel you,
Yeah.
DJ, your friends, you've been talking with Doc a bunch on Discord. Do you want to read her question? I'm going to yield the floor so you can read her question, because she had to a lot of questions. So we winnowed it down to a couple for her.
Okay.
So this one's from Hey Doc at Why the Frost Not. So the first part is Izadora is one of my favorite characters. You gave her such mysterious and intimidating, sometimes terrifying, but alluring edge. How did you approach Isadora's character? Was there anything in particular you were channeling to create her dynamic?
I think Izadora is a highly centered person. I just feel like she is very strong, but somehow grounded in the in the earth. Like I don't know. And she's quite she spends a lot of time alone, I think, like with her experiment or in the Fort Salem archives, or you know what I mean. So I just feel like she's got a bit this introverted energy to her. Yeah, sorry. The mysterious and intimidating. Okay. Yes, I can see that. I don't think I was channeling anything in particular to create her dynamic. I just think it just had to do with who she was. I think it comes back to Izadora being understanding of the structure of the military. So if she comes in a class like in episode 7 where she's teaching linking, she knows that she has to be in charge of the space, in charge of these young women in front of her. So she doesn't have any problem taking that space. Whereas if she's in a scene with the biddies and Alder, she knows that she's below them. So like I just feel like she's always conscientious of the space that she needs to occupy. And sometimes that means large, and sometimes that means super little, alone in her lab dissecting a mushroom, and she has no problem molding to that. A bit like mycelium. Will, you know, I don't know. I just think that she's highly adaptable. She has no problem spending lots of time alone, and she has no problem taking her space if she needs to.
That is awesome. Kind of speaking to the mycelium part, the MFSRI, Necro Department, is now obsessed with mushrooms and their intimate connection with death, even to the point where people have bought little boxes of mushrooms that they're growing at home and eating, which is
yes.
Awesome. If we could spend hours researching them in the MFS universe. What type of research do you imagine the Necros doing with the mycelium prior to Riel touching it? How about research goals overall with Necros? Also kind of my own little add-on. What is that little thing that you pull out of the mushroom?
Right. Okay. Well, I think for this, I think the department should look into that TED Talk I was talking about earlier. I think the kind of things that they're looking at is like, what is this mycelium? What can emerge from it? Like, when is a mushroom actually growing from the mycelium? What kind of other things can grow of it, and what can it absorb? You know, because we see that it absorbed Kalida's sickness, right? Like when I dissect the mushroom and I pull out a really black, it's a small black heart, and I go to attach it to the mycelium, we see that there's black webbing on it, which comes from Kalida. So it's like, what can the mycelium absorb and what can it give, I think is what's interesting in this experiment. I think when somebody touches the mycelium, there's an interdependency that happens. Like I think that's something that Elliot explained in the After the Storm. The mycelium gives the person some of its DNA, and the person gives the mycelium some of their DNA. So I think that the mushroom bursts, and inside is a tiny black heart still beating, barely. And I feel, and I don't know if that's the right answer, but I feel like that represents Rael's heart that has been hurt because of what's happening with Scylla.
A little piece of DNA, basically. That's
amazing.
It's a black heart. Awesome. It's a small black heart. With a shriveled
awesome.
small black heart. Yeah. And I want to go attach it onto the mycelium, and then I see that there's black webbing. And I am not the one who added that intruder into my experiment. So I'm trying to understand what's happening. Yeah.
Incredible.